Myron Davis commands a very special place in the history of 20th century photography. He was one of the youngest, if not the youngest, life staff photographer hired during World War II. I was part of the hiring process because I was then an assistant to Wilson Hicks, Life's great executive picture editor. I had known Myron since we were kids together on the south side of Chicago. We went to the same public school and he lived in the next block. We then entered the University of Chicago. The first professional pictures he ever took were for the student magazine called Pulse that I edited. We hoped that Myron would get a job, and Bernie Hoffman of Life's Chicago Bureau thought he'd give Myron an assist by telling the boss in New York that Myron had been a member of the student musical comedy team playing the part of a ballerina. We happened to send Bob Capa, the famous war photographer, to Chicago about that time. He'd heard the ballerina story, and he came into the Life Chicago darkroom doing a pas de deux. The next thing that Capa knew, he was flat on his back. Nobody had told him that Myron was also a member of the wrestling team. Myron covered 5 invasions in the Southwest Pacific, but then he got malaria, and that ended his career as a war photographer. Back in Chicago, he did a very important essay on the University of Chicago. He also did a very amusing portrait of Bing Crosby, the singer. Crosby didn't want to pose for another Life picture, but we persuaded him to pose with his hat on to cover his bald head. We bet Crosby that the picture would run, and when it did, Crosby actually paid off the bets. A few years later, Myron resigned from Life to freelance. He worked for me at Ladies' Home Journal. He did occasional things for others, including coverage of the movie From Here to Eternity in Hawaii. Probably his most notable picture story was concerned the love scene in The Surf, played by Deborah Kerr and Burt Lancaster, a very sexy scene. It's been published From Here to Eternity, which was the name of the film. I kept in touch with Myron and all the way until he died just a few months ago in a fire in his Chicago apartment. This is a picture of the two of us taken not too long ago, not too many years ago. That's how I remember Myron.